All set for the next 30 minutes? Well, time to kick things off then. Now, of course, we all love the pleasure of owning our cars, we love driving them, we even like ogling at those cars that we'll never get our hands on. Now, within this world of cars lies another world of cars, a world where you'll find single individuals having 1,000 or more models under one roof. Of course, what are we talking about? We're talking about the world of scale model car collecting. And we've got our editor-in-chief Adil Jaldaru Khanawala, who's also an avid collector himself, to talk us through not just the hobby, but the passion behind it and what it's going to take for you to get started off. Miniature models of automobiles first appeared around the same time as real automobiles, although many model cars were not intended either as toys or for collecting. By the 1920s, manufacturers of real automobiles would design and construct scale as well as full-size models to plan new products and to promote their company and to attract the next generation to their products. Today, however, collecting scale-size models is a hobby and a passion. On this episode, we will take a look at the varying aspects of collecting model cars and even discuss how amateur hobbyists can start their own collection and how to go forward from there.
I was in love with the car right from the time virtually when I came from an age where I started realizing and seeing cars and bikes. But 1969 is when I think, when we came to Pune from Sholapur, my dad came and my family came here. That's where I was introduced to the Matchbox car for the first time in my life. So, and that's when when this hobby took off for me. I started collecting in a small way. We used to get 25 paise pocket money per day in those days from my parents. We used to save for about 2 weeks, and so we could go out and buy one model car at that time. So it started, and in those socialist days where socialist India was stopped from doing everything of a technological bent or a hobby sort of thing, it was deemed very superfluous, so it was tough going. In the 70s and 80s, things became a little bit easier, so to speak. But when I started doing my magazine Car and Bike International from 87, I think that's where this model car hobby really got a big fillip personally for myself, because I started collecting more, because I started earning as well. And in the 90s, after liberalization, a lot more critical mass came onto this hobby from a lot of sources. Traders would get cars, our outlook towards things going abroad, that would happen, so we get models. And then one of my very close friends, who should be the architect of the model car craze in India, Avinash Agarwal from Bangalore, I identified for him what he should do, and he adopted that thing, started importing the Burago model cars. They were the first name amongst the 1:18 scale model cars in the world at that time. And Buragos really got this hobby going, not just for me, but for countless other Indians as well.
With so many models now available to the amateur collector, how does one go about creating a collection that is unique and tells a story? Themes are a good way to start.
Over the last 10-12 years, I have still continued to collect indiscriminately, but there's also a method to the madness, because a few themes have really proliferated. Like one theme, all the outright winners of the Lama 24-hour race from 1923 to 2014, I have got each and every one of them in 1:43 scale. the Formula One world champions from 1950 to the present have been there. Talk about cars of the Maharajas. This is a very interesting but very difficult theme to really work on. I have managed to collect about 20-30 cars with an Indian connect with Maharajas. Then I've got a collection like Michael Schumacher is a perennial favorite, one of my heroes across over there. So I've got every car which Michael raced, right from his Formula 3 to his DTM to his World Sports Car Championship to his first Formula 1 race in the Jordan to the Benettons and right till his last race with Mercedes-Benz. So I've got, probably it's a shrine of mine to Michael Schumacher. Same way I've started with Sebastian Vettel's cars. He's still ongoing, so it's a little easy. I've got something which I'm working on, Ayrton Senna's collection. I've got quite a sizable number, but I still don't have a couple of them. So in that sort of sense, these are the themes which denote what I collect on. I also have got practically every road going Ferrari there is, but then I don't think it's the right statement because I still keep on coming about one-off specials done by unknown coach builder, so that will be never ending. That's why I also have a section where cars which were sold in India, made and sold in India in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I've got a collection of cars with an India manufacturing base in mind. So there are themes which go on, and of course motorcycles are a big favorite for me. So I've got a sizable collection. So I think we should look at a lot of themes for any newcomer who wants. And I don't say that everyone needs to collect 1:18s. Even if they collect, look into it and collect the Matchbox and the Hot Wheels cars. There are some great subjects which come out from there. All of them are not outlandish. Many of them are serious.
One is to 8, 1:18, Matchbox cars. Well, what is the scale that we keep talking about?
Scale is, like we talk about, this is one of the large scales which not many model car collectors collect. This is 1:8 scale. That means from the original 1:1 model, it has been scaled down 8 times. So that is what we mean by 1:8. This is 1:12. It has been scaled down 12 times from the original. This is the normal 1:18 scale which many model car collectors, these two are 1:18 scale cars, which many model car collectors in India also collect big time. The American scale was 1:32 and 1:24. This is 1:32 and this is 1:24. The Americans had their own particular scales. And then, which is the most popular scale in the world, the second most popular scale in the world is 1:43, like this Ferrari denotes. This is an oddball 1:47 scale, but the biggest scale of all in the world globally with kids, collectors, enthusiasts, companies has got to be 1:64. The Matchbox, Dinky, Tamiya, this sort of a thing. And the smallest scale is 1:87. This 1:87 scale started with railroading, where the HO scale of railroads, the dioramas, so they needed cars to make up the scenery, and that's how this scale proliferated. Also amongst collectors, when you have our own dioramas, you have got 1:18 scale model petrol pump canisters, dispensers. You also have figurines. This is old man Enzo Ferrari sitting on the parapet at Monza, reading the Italian Corriere del Sera newspaper telling him about how his cars performed the day before. So this is how we denote scale as far as model cars are concerned.
With so many models to collect, scale and theme are good starting points for anybody. But one does need to keep an eye on how much to spend.
I think you have to start with what is available within your vicinity, which your pocket can afford, without what you call running, because you can really go bankrupt with this sort of hobby if you're not careful, because the urge to collect sometimes really gets the better. So you need to keep some money parked aside. I'm only going to spend 1,000 rupees a month on my car. So in 1,000 rupees, maybe you'll get about 15-20 Hot Wheels cars. Not every Hot Wheels is a collector item, but if you go scour the internet, scour your model car shops, you'll get some special Hot Wheels cars. So it is a hobby which is also involving, it's creative. So if you get into the hobby for those reasons, then you will be hooked for life, and it will be the right way to get into. So I think this is how, start with the Hot Wheels, then progress across over there to larger cars. An average 1:18 scale car will cost you about 1,500 to 2,000 rupees depending on the make of car, like a Valley or a Maestro. But then you can, those cars also fantastic for the price and the value they give. At the end of the day, you want a car which you love for what it stands for and not for the price. Price should not matter at all. And I think that is how you should build it up.
The passion for collecting model cars is not something restricted to the big cities. We took a trip to Jalgaon in Maharashtra to meet up with another model car enthusiast, Abhishek Kaul, whose scale model car collection may just end up in a first-of-its-kind museum in his hometown, Jalgaon.
I simply love cars. When the name cars strikes off my mind, I go weak in the knees. And I started it all as I was 3 years old, and my father bought me a small dinky car, and that was a Porsche. And instead of playing with it, I was quite possessive about it, and I still have that car. After 30 years, I still have the car in quite a good condition. I also played with the cars which my father and mother bought me when I was a kid. But then I had an ambition to get all the cars in the world. I wanted that I should own all the cars in the world, and I have the privilege now that I don't have the actual one by one, but I can boast that I have all the major cars in the world, right from the Ferraris to Lamborghinis to the old vintage cars also. For the last 5-6 years, I have streamlined my collection. I don't go for haphazard buying, and I've been collecting in some specific themes. It starts from the evolution of automobile. How did the car thing actually started off, and what set off the automobile revolution, and from the oldest steam wagons to the latest zooming Paganis and Lamborghinis. I have all of them in my collection. Since last 10-15 years, when I am into serious collection of die-cast actual replicas, I have added about 1,000 more, and I clean them, and it's definitely difficult to maintain them, and to clean them I find time during Diwali vacations, and every year I make it a point that during Diwali it takes almost a month, 2-3 hours a day, and to clean it, and I myself, with the help of my family, my wife, my child, and 2-3 help I need, and I clean them personally.
With a large and expanding collection of scale models, we couldn't help but ask him which of these are his prized possessions.
My favorite cars definitely will be the old vintages. They all started what today the modern cars are there. And one of the favorites, just you can see behind at the behind, there's the Daimler motor wagon, the Benz patent motor wagon, and the Ford quadricycle. They started the actual auto revolution, and we can see the modern zooming cars. They are quite taken off from the older versions. Being in a small town like Jalgaon, where getting a actual miniature die-cast replica is next to impossible. I've always been at the disadvantage of being in Jalgaon for this hobby, because Jalgaon is not the ideal place for this hobby to get off. Actually, this hobby is quite a phenomenon in European and American countries. But last 10 years, metro cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, Pune have gone big time in collecting. So definitely I find it difficult. I always have to depend upon my friends, relatives who are abroad, and I buy online, and specific 2-3 dealers and shops in Mumbai and Delhi. I rely on them to get this model.
Being a relatively unknown hobby, how do people in Jalgaon react to his car collection?
People from Jalgaon do come to see my collection, and I think what broader aim I am taking now, I'm having a broader aim now, and I'm contemplating a small museum for Jalgaon people, setting up a small museum for automobiles, and in that I can categorically showcase the automobile evolution right from the olden days to the modern cars, so that people and from all ages, right from the kids to the aged people, they can get into the insight of automobiles, and maybe that can trigger off a hobby revolution in Jalgaon.
With decades of collecting cars, how does he plan to take things forward?
More and more cars. I'll be adding cars and cars and cars, nothing else. And one day, eventually, I'll be setting up a small automotive museum. And there is no end to this hobby. Take my words, there is no end to this hobby. The more you search online, the more you get into this hobby, the more and more cars you want. But looking at the budgetary constraints, you have to stop somewhere. But then, this is quite a good hobby.
The passion for collecting miniature cars seems to be growing. While Abhishek calls collection and eventual plans for a hobby car museum may bring interest in a small city, in big metros like Mumbai, access to the latest models has already got a lot of collectors raring to expand their collection. We caught up with a few to find out more about how they started collecting scale models.
I started collecting cars when I was 5 years old. My uncle gave me dinky toys, and from that I started. Then I started collecting 1x18, 1x43, and that time I was studying and I was working, so it was very difficult to buy a car which is above 1,000 rupees. And then when I used to collect money from everyone, like I used to get money in Diwali, birthday, all this thing, and I used to collect, and then I used to buy cars.
I used to see the different models in the market. I don't know what scale and all that, but my father was in service, so he couldn't afford to buy me those. So I think my grandparents came visiting me once when I was about 5 years. So that was when I got my first model, a small one, I don't remember which one. And I think that's when it started.
I do like to collect cars which I love, and so I have around 20 cars right now, and all of them have been very, very close to me, and I have been seeing them since childhood, like say the Countach, the Diablo, and it's always been those poster cars which a boy always wanted in their bedroom.
It was many years ago, I don't remember exactly the date or time, but it was 250 GTO. It was those Burago days when everything was made in Italy, and I still have that model, though it's well worn. And it was bought as a toy, but then after I realized it's not a toy, that's when this collection began.
Having nurtured this hobby for so long, what does their collection look like now?
Well, I don't have a very large collection because I only buy the models which I love as real life cars. So if there's a cult vehicle that I've been fond of and dreamt of owning, then I'd get a model of it and look at it and pray that I one day own the real model.
My collection is pretty much 1:18. I like collecting cars from the 60s and 70s because that was where you can see a lot of art influence into your cars. The designs had a lot of art deco elements into them. So I try and scour for cars that are pretty rare and difficult to get. My favorite would definitely be my Cadillac Eldorado, because it probably defines what the 60s and 70s were all about, flower power and fins. So that is definitely my favorite.
In terms of collection, I collect from race cars to vintage cars. So there is no such thing as only vintage or only sports cars.
I have around small cars which are around 300-350 cars, which is Matchbox. Then I have 1/18 around 350 cars, and still I collect.
They may all be avid collectors, but any advice for those starting off?
Don't blindly go and collect cars. Just follow your heart. Collect nice, good, rare models. Bombay, there are a couple of shops which help you do that. And if you want, you can work towards a theme.
I would stick to one scale. I wouldn't have too many scales in my collection. Once you've set up a good amount of numbers in one scale, then move to the next scale.
Don't make it a rat race or anything. Have a dream like, okay, you want to read about it first, what do you want to do, and then just get into it.
Well, if you're an aspiring collector, a lot of people are biased towards the brands they buy, because even in scale model collection, you have niche brands, you have mediocre brands, and you have low spectrum brands. You might not have the means, but start with the low spectrum brands. Trust me, it's only going to grow, and no model is infinite or inferior in any way whatsoever. As long as it gives you joy, you should go ahead and get it. So make a start, everything else is going to follow, and stick to your means.
At the end of the day, no matter how big or in-depth your collection of scale models is, or how vast your themes, what really matters is the passion behind it.
You need a pursuit, you need a creative pursuit, you need a creative hobby. Invest in that for pleasure, not for monetary gain. So it depends on perspective, it depends on priority, it depends on how much you want to further that hobby. And I think I speak about this not just for myself, I speak for this whole emerging group of model car hobbyists in this country, because that is how it should be, and that is what this hobby needs.